I traveled the world. I was speaking, to tens of thousands of people. Because I wasn't present at home, alcohol started pastoring my wife. My oldest daughter is sending me pictures of mom passed out in the bathroom and me having to explain it. Irene and I had gotten into an awful fight and we're yelling. My oldest daughter had pillows over the other two kids' head, trying to protect them from me. And the awakening is when everyone wants you to come speak, but your kids don't even want you home.
When you let the applause get to your head, you create an invitation for the criticism to get to your heart. And most high achievers have no idea that it's already happening. Today, I'm joined by Jimmy Rollins. He's a speaker, he's a preacher, and he's one of the most gifted communicators I've ever seen on a stage. Jimmy has spent 25 years speaking to tens of thousands of people across churches, boardrooms, and multiple professional sports organizations. From the outside, it looked like he had it all together. But behind the scenes, he was preaching lessons that he himself wasn't always following. And it took a moment, one that he'll never forget, to wake him up. This conversation goes deep on the stuff high achievers don't talk about. The gap between who you are on stage and who you are at home. The difference between transparency, vulnerability, and real accountability. And why you'll always be as sick as your secrets. So if you're winning at work, but something feels off at home, this episode's for you. Okay, let's dive in. Well, Jimmy, didn't see this conversation coming.
Right.
I mean, we met yesterday. And what I found in life is good people, they tend to open doors to other good people.
Wow.
And we've got a mutual friend in Andy, and he hit me up with a text a couple of days ago. He said, hey, I know we're going to be in Arlington for Scale Summit. I've got a good friend. Cool if I bring him over. I'm going to have him deliver a little message to the team, and I want you to meet him.
Wow.
Didn't know your name. Literally, hey, Jimmy, Brad. And then I sat in yesterday when you talked to Andy's team about culture.
Yes.
And told some of your story. And to say the least, it was a powerful message. And I was like, hey, we've got a podcast set up. You want to knock one out tomorrow? And you're like, yeah, let's go.
Do it.
So
let's do it.
Thank you for being here. And I'd just love to hear like a little bit of your story as we dive into this conversation.
Well, Brad, first, I'm grateful to be on the podcast. And I believe that we are always one person away from reaching a lot more people. And, I believe all of us carry a message, a story from our past, from our struggle, from our wins, from our losses that can help others. And so any opportunity to help other people, that's what I want to do. And then Andy's just been a great friend. And so I'm honored to be here and honored to meet you. And my name is Jimmy Rollins, and I'm not the baseball player, but I will say I've been in a restaurant in New York where I just let people go with it, and I got free appetizers. So there's nothing like a free appy,
Yeah.
And so I absolutely love to do what I get to do. And people have tried to say, well, what do you do? And I feel like I've been put on this earth. It is simply this, to give, to be known for what I give away and not what I keep, right? In knowledge, in finances, in generosity, in wisdom. And not from a place of being an expert, but from a place of, learning over some failures. And as we talked about last night, like all of us are, could be another failure away from succeeding. So don't quit.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I embody something of who I am, I just want to be a life-giving, person that helps other people that come in contact with me, whether it's a podcast, a stage, a church, a corporation, a boardroom, or my own living room.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I love the vision of what Triad is doing and what you guys have talked about, like not just winning at work, but winning at home and winning in marriage and all the things. So I've been on the road, been speaking, communicating for, 25 years, 20 years faithfully.
Mm-hmm.
And this, in the beginning, I was kind of bivocational.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be a headhunter, a technical recruiter. And I had to learn language and code talk and all of the different things and help people get jobs, in Washington, D.C. metropolitan area,
Mm-hmm.
For their skill set. And I loved it because it was, again, helping people. And that has been literally the if you were to like say like what is my life has been about, in every role, in every environment, at every job, it's always about helping someone and getting better. And so I feel like I embody the mission of our people getting better. And so over that time, I went from technical recruiting to working for Brinks Home Security to selling cell phones for Cellular One, all the way back to, and then getting into the headhunting space. And now I'll never forget, I was doing youth events where I would go speak to troubled kids. And I still do that as a give back, but that kind of brought me to where I am today, where I've pastored a church. I've served as a chaplain for a professional, sports team. They always, there's some teams who bring me in to speak, but again, it's just helping people. So I believe that, I don't want to be known for what I keep, but rather what I give.
Yeah.
And whether that's a sermon, a business room, a boardroom, a podcast. And so I'm here today to just be a servant and to serve people with some wisdom and some knowledge and some failures.
Well, let's dive into that. What I've seen the last 20 years in finance it's a business of relationships. Yeah, at the end of the day, we're helping people with money, but money's just a tool to get them from where they are to where they want to go. And the best in this business are relationship people, but they're great communicators. And I've seen a lot over the years, and it was cool. Yesterday in our first experience, I just listened to you riff for about 45 minutes, but you have a skill set in connection and communication. So where was that unlocked? Were you always like, as a kid, you were just rolling around and everybody's just in a circle listening, or how did that develop? Where did you see that God-given gift that you had?
Well, this is ridiculously crazy what I'm about to explain. I believe that, if there's purpose in our lives, like we're not qualified, but we get qualified through practice. We get qualified through overcoming trials. And I had a severe stuttering problem growing up. I was insecure. I would not talk to a lot of people because I didn't want to stutter. I didn't want them to kind of pigeonhole me, into someone who wasn't educated or someone, who came from a certain background. And so I was very insecure. I was very quiet. I always felt like, why me? This imposter kind of syndrome. And it was about 17 or 18 where my mom and dad started working with me, getting me in places where I could get my language together, but it was still an issue. And so this speaking and communication is actually, to me, it's like a joke that now I speak all over the world with a stuttering background, and also with ADHD and dyslexia. And now I'm writing books that helping people around the world. And so I've always been in a place where I'm not going to feel like I've arrived, because honestly, I shouldn't be here anyway. And so with that mentality, I've embraced this thought that I can't be successful in one area and not be successful in all areas. And that communication just started with helping young people. And my sister was leading a nonprofit in a group of, underprivileged kids. And I would come and just love on them and take them to games and buy them. I don't know if you remember the starter jackets.
Oh.
And come on now.
I had one.
Absolutely.
90s high school kid.
Come on. And, playing Tecmo Bowl, and all the things. But it's just, it started in the stages of what I would call development, the stages of figuring it out, the stages of learning perseverance, the stages of getting over, getting kicked out of Bible college. Like all of these different stages prepared me for this stage. But so many people want to just get to the place of success without going through the place of trial and the place of struggle and the place of, that's bringing out perseverance in us. And I just want to encourage who's ever listening, where you are right now, you may feel like, man, I'm not where I want to be, but you got to look back at the wins of also you're not where you used to be. And all of those areas have given you skills for the next thing. And just me getting into a place where I couldn't talk, but I could sing. I would never stutter when I would sing. I thought I was going to be a singer. I wrote songs that artists are using, and I had no idea that that was not what was intended for me to do. It was actually giving me confidence that I was going to speak one day. And the confidence that I found in singing overcame the stuttering problem in communicating. That's crazy to me, that someone with dyslexia, someone who struggled, the only A I ever got, in high school and college was Jim. You know what I'm saying? And I don't even know if it was a good A. Maybe they just gave me that to make me feel good about myself. But now being in boardrooms and being with one percenters and talking to different people and seeing, in the room last night, just people come alive through encouragement and through enrichment and through communication. I can't believe that I get to do this now. And so that skill got developed in trial. It got developed in struggle. It got developed in being bullied. It got developed in learning how to deal with difficult people. And now I absolutely have used all of those skills. It wasn't a college education. I got a doctorate in life.
Love that. Well, you said something yesterday, because right now you're in a cool transition phase. I mean, you're 52. And back to never being scared. I mean, a lot of people would be like, 52, I'm kind of entrenched in my career right
Absolutely.
now, right? And what I love that you shared last night, like vulnerably, like, hey, I'm looking for kind of that next phase for me. And you said, I'm going to get off my stage and help others get on theirs, back to giving back.
Yeah.
And so what led to that? Tell me what that means. How are you in that process?
Well, actually, where that came from was in the mountains of Buena Vista, Colorado. And I was there doing some soul care, some soul work, and trying to figure out, who am I? What has God put me on this planet to do? Where is my worth? Where is my value? I was a pastor building a church. It was very successful, traveling in church, kind of in that ecosystem. And
these are like big church, not like my small town United Methodist, like 50 people.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, these are some of the largest churches in the country and around the world. And I did not feel like I was winning. Everyone else was calling me successful. I want what he has. You want what I have, but I don't even want it. And I felt very pigeonholed, and I felt very away from people, even though I was pastoring, because the church had gotten big. And now I've got 30, some odd staff and board meetings, and I'm not touching the people. And I'll never forget, or not close to the people, I'll never forget feeling like that and going to this soul care. And at the end of the soul care, I really felt this awakening in me that was these words: I'm calling you, Jimmy, to get off your stage, to help others stay on theirs. And I thought that that was just a physical stage, but it's actually to help others through the stages of business and life, through the stages of how do I balance, the bottom line and, help my wife or husband change the bottoms of the infants that we have at home. And I could not believe it. And so I felt alive giving up something that I had worked really hard to build, that my dad passed down to me. And I'll never forget my dad saying on the golf course, after I hit a really poor shot, when I told him, I said, hey, Dad, I'm thinking about stepping down. And I know, I'm a third generation preacher, and I know you've built this and gave it to me, but I don't think I'm built for this. And he said, phew. I was shocked. And he was like, finally. He's like, I didn't know how to tell you that I felt like there was more. I felt it's going to be different. And he said, you're created to do something different. And there's not a category for it. And I was a little ticked off at him because I wanted him to tell me exactly what to do. But he said, you have my blessing. And I gave up what others dreamed to have to now I help people. I would be the chief help officer. I'm going to help with marriage. I'm going to help with managing your relationship with your kids and business. I can step into a boardroom and talk about culture and talk about organizational development and talk about leadership and Enneagram and talking boundaries and working genius, right? And, making sure your team is growing the soil at home, right? So that they can thrive in the soil at work. One of the thoughts that I had, Brad, was, it's great to have a big team. It's great for business to grow. But when your team is unhealthy, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, it's hard to be healthy at work and produce, right? And there's a lot of business owners that want to invest in their team for the purpose of growing the bottom line, right? But there's a different philosophy, which I love at Triad, is let's grow the person so that they thrive in every area of life, including work. And so the philosophy is this: if you require more work than you're helping us do at work, then we need to do some work. I'll say that again. If the person is unhealthy and they require you as a manager, you as a boss, you as a CEO, if their personal life is jacked up, they're going to require more work, more meetings, more hands-on things, more correction. And then they end up causing you to not be doing the thing that you need to do because they're requiring more work than they're helping you do at work. So let's do some work on their heart. Let's do some work on their mind. Let's do some work. And I feel like this, being emotionally healthy. We have a lot of people that are financially healthy, but not emotionally healthy. Financially healthy, but not physical healthy. And so let's create a holistic approach so that we're not only growing a company, but we're growing legacy in families, in kids, and creating those environments. So what do I do with, I was pastoring and now I'm sitting here in the boardroom. You know what? I get to be one-on-one with someone. And I love it. I love this platform. I love you trusting me to speak into your audience.
Well, let's go a little deeper there. You sent me a conversation you and Nick Cannon had, which wasn't that long ago. Maybe a year or so ago.
Yeah. And it's like an episode. I think it's like 4 or 5 on there. I sent you one of them. I don't even know which one I sent you.
Yeah. So we'll throw it in the show notes. I listened to it last night. It was my bedtime story.
Come on.
But one of the things I think a lot of founders in our space, there's a lot of pressure. It's not easy to, you walk in the room and the whole team's looking at you and it's like, where are we going? And guess what? They're humans too. All humans have flaws, don't always respond perfectly under pressure. But I would say if you were going to take a role and maybe one up the pressure that you face as a founder in finance, it would be as a preacher, because you kind of are the guy advising everybody.
Absolutely.
Business leaders. It's like, you've got to be this perfect guy in the mirror. And you've spoken pretty openly about that pressure. And hey, I'm another dude with my flaws. And you mentioned, hey, I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I've got 3 kids at home. And a lot of times the message you were sharing from the stage preaching, it wasn't always what was happening at home.
No.
But what I love is you owned it, you were real with it. And I haven't heard that a lot from somebody in that space. So can you speak to that?
Absolutely. I think the principle is this, we all want to be free. And I think freedom is this thing that we chase that we don't know when we have it until we get there. So we have people of high net worth, but they don't feel fulfilled, right? We have all of these different dichotomies of successful on the football field, but broken at home. And I feel like that was me. I traveled the world. I was speaking, to, tens of thousands of people, but had no relationship with the one I laid next to every night, my wife. I was out there providing a place of safety, financially, safety that my family was covered with health insurance and all these things. But the missing piece was me covering my family. And so in that, I became addicted to the platform. And what I learned in that time is that if we allow the applause to get to our heads, then we also create an invitation for the criticism to get to our hearts. And in what we were doing, me and my wife, we lived in a glass bowl. Everyone can see in. Everyone, and you had this immense pressure of performing. Now we have staff. And if I mess up, the whole thing goes down. A bad marriage is kind of an occupational hazard for a preacher.
Yeah.
Right? And so I had questions in my faith of, why am I fulfilled over here, but at home, I don't even want to be home. And it got to a point where I had to work on it at home. I talked about doing the work, counseling, doing the work, accountability. And so the principle of all of this that I've learned through this is that, you know, my faith would say, what does it prosper a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? I want to change that to the Jimmy Rollins Cliff Notes version. What does it prosper a man to have the greatest business in the world, to have the greatest amount of clients in the world, and lose his family, and have no relationship with his son, and have no relationship and not be a model at home? So here we are, I'm traveling. I'm doing all of these different things around, and I'm preaching hope and talking joy, but had none. I was preaching from what I read, not what I knew. I was talking from this idea of success, but I didn't know this. And here's the principle, if you're listening. If you win in the wrong thing, you lose in the right thing. And I was winning in the wrong place. I believe that we should win at home so that now we can go win in the world. But I wasn't, because I didn't have these 4 things I'm going to talk about really quick. Transparency. Who has an invitation to see your blind spot? You know what? You and I, in our best efforts, as good looking as you and I both are here on this podcast, Brad.
I'm glad you said it.
Right? I was thinking, I know the audience was thinking about that when I said, how did they find him? GQ model, you know? You should see me in my bike, like spandex, my cycle clothes. It's a mess. My wife says it's a mess and it's offensive. But anyway, transparency is what I let you see. So if you're taking notes, if you're on here, I want to encourage you to listen into these 4 things. And then it's vulnerability. It takes it to another place. Transparency is what I let you see. Vulnerability is what I let you know. Because we can have a bad day, but when you give me definition of that bad day, when I have the definition of your dysfunction, it doesn't create criticism. It creates empathy, right? So transparency is what I let you see. Vulnerability is what I let you know. And once you're vulnerable and say, guys, I'm going through some things at home, my son, right? I get to accountability. That's what I let you hold. Transparency is what I let you see. Vulnerability is what I let you know. Accountability is what I let you hold. And now I get to intimacy, relationship. And that's when I have nothing to hide. Here's what I want to tell our audience. I know this from experience. You will always be as sick as your secrets in every area of your life. I'm not perfect. I'm free. And freedom is having nothing to hide. And when I get to the place of transparency, vulnerability, accountability, that's what I've been with Andy. That's what Andy has been with me. Transparent, vulnerability, accountability. And now we're not pursuing perfection. We're pursuing freedom. When you can show up and be authentically yourself, maybe blessing is trying to find you. If you're listening, maybe favor is trying to find you. Maybe that client that you've been dying to get is trying to find you, but they can't find you because you've not shown up as your authentic self. Maybe they're just looking for your authenticity and not your eloquent words.
Mm. What was the awakening for you? Was it a friend? that said, hey, I just see you kind of not practicing what you preach? Was it just one morning you woke up and there was just...
That's a great question.
What took you down that path?
The awakening was because I wasn't present at home, alcohol started pastoring my wife. And I am traveling, and my oldest daughter is sending me pictures of mom passed out in the bathroom and me having to explain it. It came to a head when my oldest daughter at the time, and this is 12, 13 years ago, Irene and I had gotten into an awful fight, and I'm calling her the B word and all of these different things, and we're yelling and elevated. And I had no idea that my oldest daughter had pillows over the other two kids' head, trying to protect them from me. And the awakening is when everyone wants you to come speak, but your kids don't even want you home. And my wife, as a pastor, I'm a leader, and she's in rehab. And the awakening was, what does it prosper a man to gain stages and not be able to work through the stage of a difficult moment at his house? And so I'm emotional right now because someone who's listening, I want you to just lean into this thought. There's no greater teacher than pain, but maybe there is someone else's. And if we can learn from someone else's pain, then maybe we don't have to carry as much weight as we've been carrying emotionally, spiritually, grief, disappointment, betrayal. If we can learn through the pain that I've gone through by me being real on this podcast, maybe I'm helping you stay on your stage. This is why Irene and I exist, is that I may not have the most amount of money in my bank account, but I'm a millionaire in purpose, and my currency is pain. And I don't keep it, I give it away. Pain is not meant to be kept. It's meant to give away so that your pain can be the teacher that someone else would walk in purpose.
You shared a little piece of that story on the interview I listened to, and it was your immediate reaction to the time your wife was going through, because I think at one point it was like, I'm changing the locks, I'm out.
I was out.
And then I think through counseling you kind of got called out a bit. Can you share a piece of that?
Yeah, I think I got called out a lot. And a few of the statements that stick out to me right now as we talk is a friend calling me who was like more of a mentor. And he said, he was asking me how things are going. I was like, Irene, and she's drinking and all the things, and we're fighting. I wasn't owning my own stuff, And he said this. He said, it's your fault. And he said, Jimmy, I'm tired of hearing you complain. He said, you will never have the wife you want until you learn to love the wife you have. And if you try to get in this marriage and get a new wife because you have some ideal that the situation will be better, it's not about her getting better. It's about you getting better. That sat with me. That was a blind spot for me. Like, when an advisor goes out and advising someone, they need to know the whole picture. It's you're asking a potential client, to unfold the picture. What's the story? What's your goals? But before we get goals, where are the areas that you're struggling? This is life, not just a new client. But what if we took on that approach? In order for me to get better, I first got to expose the vulnerabilities, expose the issues, expose it. That moment, realized that I believe this, that love is at its best when people are at their worst. But we live in a culture that says, I'll love them if they love me first. But the very definition of love, in order for it to be love and that to be experienced, there has to be something that's unlovable. And that was the day that I fell in love with my issues and my wife's issues and dysfunction, to the point that I realized that us being together, it's not for her to help me. It's for me to help her be all that she was created to be. And I think what's difficult in this industry is we're helping people be all that they are created to be in legacy, but legacy requires family. If you have an inheritance to give away when you're gone, but no family to give it to, what was it for? What? I feel like the very nature of this business is family. But oftentimes it's easy to neglect the main thing when the dollar signs show up and the accolades show up and the person, client of the month advisor of the month shows up. I want to be dad of the month. I want to be husband of the month, right? I want to be connected to who I am. And I feel like that moment when my friend said that sits out to me significantly. Mm-hmm. Significantly.
Well, you were, you shared you were like the guy for everybody else. But I think you said yesterday there were 4 people that matter at the end of the day because you have 3 kids.
Absolutely.
Right? And those were the ones that you were talking about it, but you weren't doing it. So how did you flip that? Because obviously there was a lot of work that went into it. It wasn't just snap the fingers. Was that talk from your friend was like, we're calling somebody, we're talking, you bring your wife into the game. How did that play out?
Well, I think many of us, we've gone through education systems and we've gone through college to get tools to do a skill. But the one tool or the set of tools that we neglect are the tools to deal with conflict in our homes, to deal with conflict within our own souls. And I'm going to call it being emotionally healthy. I took a year to learn about how to have conversations with myself before I have conversations with my wife or people I'm in conflict with. I took years to what we now have penned as, we call it marital mapping for marriage, but misery mapping. What are the areas that you feel that come up a lot? Are you angry? Are you upset? Are you in grief? These are emotions. Are you shameful? When did you feel that before this moment? So I asked myself questions like, where have I felt this before? So before me and my wife are sitting across the table, or me, an employee sitting across the table having a hard conversation, I first want to know what is in me that needs to change before they change. And so I had to be vulnerable with myself, transparent with myself, accountability for myself. And that took counseling, coaching, other couples, moments where no one is around, where I would then walk into an auditorium and I'd be the only one there. You know what I would do? I know I'm going to talk to these people or preach to these people or do a talk, a motivational, expression to these people. I would sit in the audience in different chairs and get a vision for the personal pain that all of those people are coming in the room with, as I did yesterday. And now I want to inspire, motivate, move through transparency. I mean, the old adage is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I want to build rapport. I want to create laughter in the room. Now let's talk about principles like I did yesterday. But that took work. That took pain. That took having hard conversations with my children saying it was my fault. That took admitting that I was a preacher who back then who had a pornography issue. I don't care that the world knows. You know why? Because it's freedom, not having secrets. I don't have secrets. And it's so liberating to wake up not having a thought of what if they find out. It's liberating. And so I just want to encourage, you're not going to counseling to fix your marriage. Your marriage is an indication that you need to be fixed. And so I look at controversy, betrayal, conflict as a mirror. So if we were in a situation and we had to have a hard conversation, and Brad was just like, no, I'm better looking. And I'd be like, no, I'm better looking. And we went back and forth. And I had to say, Brad, I just want to break this down for you. And we had to have a difficult conversation. I'm looking at you as a mirror to reflect back at me what needs to change in me. And here's the principle. What you don't reflect internally, you will project externally onto other people. So maybe you're dealing with a hard conversation at work, but really that hard conversation wants to bring out a way in you that handles conflict at home. Right? Here's what I found about 1%ers. They don't know how to come under the company that your family has established while you're out building the physical company. In other words, if you're a business owner, you got two businesses. You control this one. Your wife should control the other one because she works all day building an environment, and then you get to come home and be in charge. No, you're in charge here, but you need to submit and come under here. I talk to a lot of 1%ers. No one will tell them, hey, bro, you're arrogant. Hey, you're ridiculously in charge. Hey, man, you need to pass gas because you're uptight. You don't need a counselor. You need to fart. No one will say things like that, but I make it funny so that they have a moment to embrace, wow. And so I can't say who it was, but I was out playing golf with a 1%er, and they brought me in to do an intensive, relational intensive, like how to communication boundaries with their company. And they won, and we played golf. Then was day 2, and we went and played golf, and I was beating him bad. You know, I didn't feel sorry for him though, because I knew he doesn't know how to lose. He got quiet. He got, I'm like, bro, you got a lot of money in the bank, but I'm kicking your butt on this golf course. And I told him, he goes, he was all uptight. And I was like, hey man, you shouldn't get mad at that last shot. He's like, why? I was like, because you suck. Right? This is what I said. And I said, and on that thought, you actually suck at work. And he was like, almost like, I paid you to come in. Yeah, you paid me to come in to tell you the truth. And I said, no one else will tell you the truth. And I was like, you invite your team to a table and you've given them responsibility. But responsibility given without authority given is control. And that's why you have yes men at your table. They can't be creative because your idea trumps theirs. Do you know how to lead from the second seat and bring out the best of other people? Your business, your company are going to do way more. Going to go way further. You'll have loyalty. You'll stop having the back door bigger than the front door. You just got to be low and humble and go to counseling and take Tums because you're too uptight.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm 5 years into this entrepreneurship, I had kind of your transition out of the church. I was 13 and a half years in what became from 12th employee to one of the largest companies in the world in finance. and in our space at least. And what's really interesting, if you allow yourself to be honest with yourself, is when you are leading the company, it does create some of those behaviors by your team, because I mean, you're the guy that's kind of in charge of, do they have a job or not? And what gets in the way is truth a lot of times, because we all have that thought in our head when you walk in a room with another human and you can kind of see some things they don't always see in themselves. So how this conversation, how would you start to coach somebody that's maybe not super aware all the time with how they show up to start to become more aware? Is it you in their ear kind of sharing that? Or what are some ways that people can start to get through that? Because that's a common issue with leadership.
Well, I think there's first just assessment. Like, we have to look at Enneagram. We have to look at Working Genius. We have to read The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni. Like, we've got to do some work and not read those books to fix them. And many business owners, you're trying to figure out, how do I get my team to do this? But we're not looking at, hey, how do I become a better leader? And we let the assessments do the talking. And every assessment has there's a brilliant nature to, being a 7 or 8, but there's also a dark side. So let's not just talk about what's amazing about it. Let's talk about what's the struggle about it. Now we look at the assessment, and now we can talk and have hard conversations, because I'm also like you. So here are the things that I've had to do. And I feel like, and then we give the team permission to answer the questions about us. The best teams is when you bring in me, or you bring in someone who can do an assessment, and you sit down and you interview them, and they can say, here's the question: how is it like working for me?
And they can answer honestly.
And they can answer honestly, but they're answering with me as a coach to take that into a way to present it how you can receive it, so you don't feel bullied by the people you're paying, right? But when people have access to that, and have access to, man, he's changing just like us. What you're saying is this: I'm not asking anything from you that I'm not willing to do myself. That's true leadership. It's not telling people what to do. It's people following you. That's why I said yesterday, culture is not taught, it's caught. And so what do they catch you doing? And here's a thought about culture. What you celebrate will create culture in your employees, and your partners, in your environment. And it will create repetitive performance. You make it important, they'll keep doing it. But guess what? What you tolerate, it also creates culture. And it's like, what you tolerate, what you're scared to have the conversation. If it's an angry environment, it's going to create culture. And honestly, you won't have longevity and loyalty. I want loyalty. Not minions, just going around doing what I say. I want loyalty to the point that they can challenge me, and at the same time know that I have to make the final decision. But I'm listening to them not to be right. I'm listening to them so I ensure that they understand that I understand what they're saying. And so my goal in the conversation is not to be right, it's to be understood. And here's a thought for the people who are in charge of other people. The thought is this, is like, are we listening to understand, or are we listening to be right? Awareness of your employees' strengths does not mean the absence of your own. Many times, if you haven't done the work, they're strong in an area, you feel insecure, so you'll control it because you don't want anyone to see that you don't know. But the best bosses know who they're not, so that they can hire who they're not to fill the gaps. But they don't get to a place of transparency, vulnerability, accountability. I know what I'm not, so I hire so that our team can be the fullness expression of success.
Okay, I want to switch it up. We were having a conversation last time. This was an hour into knowing each other. And what was cool is you have a gift of connection. Like, we talked about communication, but I'm sure you've heard this before. Like, you just break down walls really quickly. It's through probably your humor. You're not taking yourself too seriously. But I've got a friend named Josh. Played college football with him. And so my coming up, Minneapolis, Kansas, 2,000 people, all white dudes. And so my wife and I, both small town Kansas, like one of our principles for our family is we love small town. But the downside of small town is lack of exposure to the world. You know, like if you never leave the small town, you don't get out and see the diversity and everything that is out there. And so we raised our kids in a small town, but one of our principles was we wanted to travel. We wanted exposure. We wanted different cultures, different people, different ethnicities. And back to my buddy Josh, who I played college ball with, grew up in Chicago, black dude, one of my best friends in the world. And he's challenged me because he's seen Triad grow. And he's like, where are all the black dudes at? You know? And in finance, being in this business since 2007, I'm just going to say it's very middle-aged white guy. And even females were excluded. Now that's changing, and it's changing for the better. But I just wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on that take? How could finance open up the door to more diversity, more of what the real world looks like, not just a bunch of white people running around managing your assets?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
That's a great question. And I get this in every environment, especially the church environment, right? And they're like, or the nonprofit environment, like, how do we, embrace diversity? And I said, well, a company can never embrace something that the owner doesn't embody. Like, if you want an area to become diverse, what's that diverse expression look like in your life personally? Because, who we are is what the environments that we create of what the environment will be. And so we can't ever have diverse people in seats until we're open up to diverse people in the seat of our hearts. And we have to embody and embrace this mentality that the word unity does not exist if there's not disunity or difference, right? Or division, right? The word unity in itself embodies that it's not uniformity. There's a scripture that says how good and pleasant it is when brethren dwell together in unity. It doesn't say dwell together in uniformity. So if we take that principle, take it out of the book, and just live that principle, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Here's the challenge. You don't get to pick your neighborhood. Right? And what happens is I feel like our nation, our globe is divided because it's not because of racism. It could be elitism. And elitism is that I don't have to care. I've created an environment that I love everybody, but up to a point. And so it starts here. Would you agree that everyone loves to be comfortable?
Of course.
Right? And it's crazy how you can be, I love to be comfortable. Now you can say, if, me and my wife are shopping for a couch and she's, 5'3", 125, 30 pounds, how do we come together on a couch purchase? Her legs are going to hang off and my legs are going to be perfect. Right? So she says, no, I'm comfortable here. Then she starts to prefer what she's comfortable with. So now comfortability has caused preference. And preference is, I prefer this, right? The next stage is standard. You started at comfortability, now your preference. Now your preferences become a standard. And the standard is everyone who prefers what I prefer, that's who I surround myself with. Preference, comfortability, preference, preference, standard. Now it gets into exclusivity. Exclusivity is very dangerous because this is where stereotypes start to grow. A stereotype is this: when your mind has decided to stop learning based off of what you've heard or experienced in the past. Like many of the listeners right now, they haven't heard, a diverse, who I am here on this podcast. And they're like, wow, this guy, he's smart, or like he knows a lot. Like, I want to bring him in. But why wouldn't you have before? Because you didn't have proximity. Stereotyping is deciding something about someone or something with what you saw in the news, what you read, but you didn't have proximity with, and making a decision. So what I believe diversity is opening us up to be comfortable with things that may not fit us, to not have a preference. I prefer to buy a sleep number bed where both sides, everyone can have their own setting, but we're still in the same bed, right? Now, the standard is everyone is valued, right? And it gets to this place of not exclusivity. Man, there's differences. So everyone's wanting to know, like, is this racism? Is it not? Well, are you just comfortable? Has your comfortability turned into preference? Has your preference created a standard that's gone to exclusivity, just building your world with people who you prefer to be in your world? And I got some friends, I could say here today, I got white friends. But what I love about this conversation is different doesn't mean better. It just means different. And the culture of your business, if you opened up that business book, your mindset to reach anybody, everyone, and anybody, I bet you could take your sales numbers to a whole nother level. And I feel like I know the African-American community because I am African-American. And just open yourself up to, I'm learning so much from Andy. But it's like, he doesn't love me because I'm Black. I don't feel like a project. I feel like a friend. And we may dress different. We may talk different. We may vote different. I don't know. I never even talked about that stuff. And guess what? The difference of just who he is and who I am, unity. And that's where favor and blessing come from.
Yeah. It's interesting you said comfort. So we did a little project as a family, Johnson Family Values. And one of them is Johnsons get uncomfortable and do hard things. And that's where the growth comes from. But I never looked at it through that lens. I mean, try it exists today because I was having that conversation with my kids. And then I looked in the mirror and I said, I'm staying comfortable. I know there's more out here. I know it's time for me to kind of leave the nest that I grew up in, but I was preaching it, but I wasn't doing it. And then I kind of had that realization where it's like, I'm not going to be on my deathbed where my kids tell me, well, Dad, you talked about it, but you never did it yourself, but hearing it through that lens of like, apply that to all of your life. And you brought a story to mind. I was at this conference and there was a project where people were incarcerated and they created an entrepreneurship program inside of jail so that when they got out, they wouldn't fall back into what got them in. And there was this dude named Chris, was one of like the 3 or 4 there. And this was like a bunch of 1%ers, 150 in the room. A guy named Jason Gaynard runs a group called Mastermind Talks, really, really cool community. And I remember looking over in the corner, bald-headed dude, pretty big, burly, full face tats, like covered. Like the type of guy, if you let yourself go there, you're like, it's intimidating and you create the narrative in your head. And I made a decision right there because my natural tendency was, probably not going to strike up a conversation with that dude. I flipped it and I said, I must. And about a day later, I got on a bus with him. He was sitting in the back by himself. And I just walked straight back, sat down next to him. And I said, hey, Chris, can I hear your story?
Wow.
Grew up in LA. Dad was a drug dealer, had him on a street corner by the age of like 6 or 8 running drugs for him. I won't go full depth into the story, but what I learned in that moment is I was probably 40. Had our roles been reversed, had Brad grown up in that environment, I would have been the guy in that room with the face tats. And I think a lot of times in life, back to comfort, we just write somebody off before we even know their story.
It's real.
And
I do it too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, you can't always control the first thought that comes through your head, you know? And so I appreciate that. And I'm going to continue to help run this organization in a way where we don't ever write people off before we know their story, because there's a lot of really cool stories out there that, given the chance, you know? So I don't even know where to take it from here. We could literally, I think we could do an 8-hour podcast. Right. I'm not going to do that to you. I know you've got some speaking engagements tonight, but Jimmy, I really, really appreciate the conversation. Andy, who's right over here off camera.
Yeah.
Andy, come on. You got to at least like pop your face on here. You made this conversation happen. So here's the Andy.
Here's the Andy, guys. This is a good man right here.
Yeah. And
we're twins. I don't know if you can tell.
So, and what's cool is this conversation happened because you all met in an elevator randomly, and it was like that sort of conversation that just
in another country.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
So anyway, gentlemen, appreciate it, Jimmy.
Absolutely.
And till next time. I have a feeling there's going to be a next time.
I can't wait.
So
I hope so too.
All right.
Can't wait. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you.